Good evening. It's now 6:30, and I call this regular meeting of the Victoria City Council to order. Our tradition is to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on the agenda this evening is announcements. All meetings of the City Council are open to the public and held in council chambers at City Hall unless otherwise noted. If you're interested in speaking at a council meeting, we encourage you to contact our city clerk for more information. The City Council workshop and regular council meetings scheduled for July 8th have been canceled. The next council meeting will be held on Monday, July 22nd at 6:30 p.m. following the 5 p.m. budget workshop. As noted, the council's next workshop is scheduled for Monday, July 22nd at 5 p.m. During this workshop, council will continue to discuss the 2025 preliminary budget and will hear from department directors on budget pressures, cost-saving opportunities, and operational efficiencies. In other announcements, please join us on Wednesday, June 26th for Project Life Cycle Bike Repair Clinic in Bayfront Park from 5 to 7 p.m. and stick around for the great music. Our summer series of concerts in the park will be starting at 6 p.m. at the bandstand. The Victoria Farmers Market kicks off the season on Thursday, June 27th from 3 to 6 p.m. in the lower parking lot at Enke Brewing. When out at the market, be sure to swing by our City of Victoria booth at the market on the 27th. We'll have the Carver County Arts Consortium joining us to share information about the arts, artists, events, and cultural organizations in Carver County. Additionally, anyone visiting our city booth during the market will have the opportunity to work with one of our local artists to make your own felt soap for free. Night to Unite is right around the corner. This is an annual event which will be held on Tuesday, August 6th from 5 to 8 p.m. Neighborhood organizers can register your parties with the City of Victoria to reserve a visit from firefighters, sheriff's deputies, members of the City Council, and staff. We guarantee visits to the first 20 parties that register, so be sure to register your party early, and you can learn more about Night to Unite and reserve a visit at our city website. The next item on the agenda this evening is a proclamation. I have a proclamation here at the desk that I will read. Proclamation 2024-07 is to designate July as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas park and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Victoria, Minnesota, and whereas our parks, recreational areas, water access locations, and natural amenities is why Victoria is known as the City of Lakes and Parks, and whereas our Parks and recreation programs are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and a region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, and improve the quality of air that we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce a habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate in the outdoors. And whereas the City of Victoria recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore I, Mayor Deb McMillan of the City of Victoria, do hereby proclaim that July 2024 shall be observed as Park and Recreation Month. The next order of business is to adopt the final agenda. Council, can I get a motion to adopt the final agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to our next item, which is open forum. This is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda and not in application form that will be coming to the council at a future date. We have one individual who's registered to speak in advance, and that is ECFE Coordinator, Ms. Molly Bonneman. Ms. Bonneman, please step to the podium, state your name and address for our record, and share your message with us this evening.
My name is Molly Bonneman, and I live at 609 6th Avenue South in Hopkins, Minnesota. I am here to present on Tour de Tonka, to which the lovely city of Victoria has been a supporter of for many years. So this is kind of our TDT wheel of numbers. 294 is the total route miles for the 2024 ride. 44 are the total U.S. states where riders are from since 2006. 19, this is the 19th annual Tour de Tonka, so very close. 51 is our number of legacy riders who have continued to ride the ride since its inception in 2006. 43,903 is the total number of riders, including repeats since 2006. And $103,321 is the total amount that's been donated to the ICA food shelf since 2006. Whew, that's always so many numbers to remember. I only have one trivia question for you tonight. I hope that that is not disappointing for you, but I am not going forward. Close?
We're going to troubleshoot that real quick here.
No problem. Click it now. Nope, still nothing. There we go. How many riders are registered for the 2023 Century Ride? So how many riders rode the 100-mile ride last year?
518.
Any other guesses?
Nobody else wants to play along?
I'm going to
Thank
go
you so much, Mayor.
665.
You are correct.
Ooh.
Our 100-mile ride is one of our most common rides because it's really accessible for people who are interested in riding distances. We also have a lot of people that kind of do it together in camaraderie or in challenge. So my favorite story is that there were two neighborhood kids who've been riding bikes together since they were little, and when they turned 10, they did the 100-mile ride with their adults following closely behind, but not being in the ride with them. So it was pretty cool. These are all the rides for this upcoming year. The one change is we typically have like a 71 mile. It'll be 65 this year. Just as you all know, it is the season of road construction. So every year we're having to kind of tweak things as we find out what's happening in the communities. This is a representation of many of the sponsors that help to make this event happen. Domino's Pizza serves pizza at the finish line, so no matter what distance you ride. I like to say that this is probably the only sporting event that you're ever going to do that you will probably gain weight while doing. We feed you very well along the way. Boyer Building Corporation helps to build an entire, it's almost like a village at the high school. If you've ever been there to see the finish line, it's really amazing transformation it takes on for this event. I keep hitting the wrong button. It might be user error here on this one. This is our rider shirt for this year. I'm loving this year's take on the logo. I think it's really cool. This is our volunteer shirt. So for anybody, and I'm just going to do my spin, anyone that is civic-minded, please come and donate your time. If you have a company that you're interested in getting the word out, if the routes that come through Victoria, you can sponsor a rest stop. And it's free for you to do that. You just have to come and help us hand out food. There's always really good music, and it's a lot of fun. These are some quotes about why people have said that they choose to ride Tour de Tonka. I ride for the memory of my brother, who was an avid cyclist. And I like that someone comes home just to see lots of friends and does the bike ride each year. We are so close to getting a bingo on the United States. We have Idaho, Wyoming, Hawaii, Alabama, Vermont, and Delaware left. I understand why Hawaii maybe isn't coming here in August, but everybody else could take a trip. So if you know anyone from far away that wants to come for a visit and ride their bike, help us get a bingo. The counties we're still looking for. And we need volunteers. It's such a heavy lift. And so we're always seeking people who can give us an hour, two. We'll take you all day. If you ride a motorcycle, we're always needing people on motorcycles. If you have experience sweeping or you help with other mountain bike teams, we would just love to hear from you. The more people we have out on the road, the safer we feel about the ride. You get free pizza too. The last slide is the executive director of Minnetonka Community will be retiring at the end of the summer in August. He is the person that started Tour de Tonka, and so it's really near and dear to his heart. It'll be the last thing he does as the community ed director, so that's going to be really fun for him. He really appreciates the partnership he's created with all of you and just wants you to know that he'll miss you and miss Tour de Tonka. So, first Saturday in August every year. Hopefully we're not going to have any rain this year. It's going to be beautiful because all the rain's coming out now. That's my philosophy on it. And I, of course, have swag. That's what we do. So would you like a cup or a hat? 'Cause you can choose.
I'd like you to go the other direction, but if you have to give me one, I'll take a hat. Yeah,
You want a hat?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
I brought my son to the last one I did, and he handed out the swag, which was much more entertaining.
Thank you.
What would you like?
A cup, please.
You
Thank
can have
you.
half a cup. Or
Do we have any,
in there and half a bottle of wine, whatever you want.
well, yeah.
I would say go around and let the swag make its way, and if there's, yes, yeah.
I'll do the hat.
Okay, my son says it's the most comfortable hat
All
he's ever
right.
worn.
I'm gonna
If
do,
there's any questions,
I'm gonna do
let
a
me know.
cup because I don't like cat hair. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do a cup.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Molly while she works her magic with the
Very much.
swag?
This is awesome.
This is it's been a great event for 20 years, nearly 20 years. So amazing stuff. So thank you.
Yep, and
Very
thank
much.
you for your time tonight. You have a good rest of the evening.
Very good. Thanks, Molly.
You.
I'll see you again next year.
We'll look forward to it. Thanks. All right. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to address the council on an item that's not on the agenda this evening? All right. I'm seeing no one, so we are going to carry on. Next up is our consent agenda. The items on this agenda are routine administrative and do not require deliberation or are housekeeping items that are required by law. They're approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, does staff wish to pull anything from the consent agenda item this evening, or consent agenda this evening?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Any members of the council who wish to pull something from the consent agenda?
None there.
Okay. Or a member of the audience? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, moving on to our regular agenda. First item on the agenda this evening is 6.1, which is to consider a conditional use permit amendment for Holy Family Catholic High School for their scoreboard. Kicking us off, no pun intended, this evening is our associate planner, Travis Brierly. Travis, welcome. I think this is the first time you've been with the council.
It is, Mayor. February 1st was my last council meeting I've ever had, so
Oh,
it's been a while.
well, welcome back to the fore.
Mayor and council in front of you tonight is a request for a conditional use permit amendment. The original CUP was issued in 1999, and this is for a scoreboard which has a dynamic design, or excuse me, a dynamic display component to it. Throughout the CUP amendment process, we're at the city council consideration phase where council will be asked to make a motion at the end of tonight's item. We did have the planning commission last week where we held a public hearing. We did not receive any comments at the public hearing. However, we did receive one phone call that came in where there were some concerns about light and noise coming from the sign and just the use of the athletic field. The planning commission did recommend to go ahead and ask the council to approve the CUP amendments as they were presented. We do look at the existing conditions of the site, which the CUP allowed for a maximum building height of 40 feet, specifically written in. It also allowed for the current scoreboard that's on the south wall of the gymnasium to be placed. And then the intention behind that was that the scoreboard would be used in conjunction with events on the athletic field. The amended conditions that are being presented tonight are, one, to have just still a single backlit display. So if this is approved, the Holy Family could put in a new scoreboard, they'd still have to remove the old one, so they wouldn't be able to have both. It's not to exceed 900 square feet, not to exceed the 40 feet in height. We also there's a lot of pipes in the ground, so we worked with Public Works, and there's a 20-foot setback for the public infrastructure to protect our services as a community. The operation of the sign would be prohibited regardless of its placement between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. if it's within 50 feet of a property. We also looked at brightness restrictions for what other communities use, as well as some federal standards for billboards, especially since there's plenty of roads in the area. Sound is prohibited to be coming from the sign. The field already has a PA system, so that would continue to get to use. In addition, we want to make sure that it won't cause a hazard and it's not placed in such a way where it's going to become a nuisance either to motorists or to our community members. In addition to that, a way that we can follow up on that as a city is we put a condition in that if there are complaints, that we just want to make sure we're keeping a good relationship with Holy Family, being able to go out and have the conversation to resolve those issues. And then in addition to that, the amendment does not have a specific location for the sign. What it does is it would allow for a scoreboard to be placed wherever on the property in the future, allowing longer flexibility without having to come back to the city council in, say, 20 or 30 years when technology updates or the athletic fields change. The proposed placement is on the north side of the field. If you look at the image on the left, where the blue box is where the rough location they're proposing to put the sign. It would be facing south across the field. The existing scoreboard is highlighted in green there on the south of the gymnasium, just for perspective of how far or what the distance will be from the old scoreboard to the proposed new one. In addition to that, because of phone calls from residents and some of those concerns, we took a look at how close roughly the scoreboard would be to adjacent residential properties as well as the road. It's about 700 feet to the county road, and it's about 900 feet to the nearest residential property. The size is a concern that the planning commission pointed out. It's sometimes hard to describe what those are. So in front of you is the size. It is a large sign. I will say that. It will sit a total of 38 feet up, and that's one of the reasons that we put a maximum height of 40 feet on there, is just make sure that everything's in line. It's also 895 square feet for its total dimension. So it is fairly large. We did do some research on what those look like, and going out to Waconia's high school, they have a similar size sign. It's slightly smaller, but just to give an example of how big that is, if you look through the goalpost, that goalpost is offset from it, but it's large, but it's manageable, and they have kind of the same thing. They're just not as close to residential as we are. On the right is a proposed image from the sign manufacturer of what it would look like at the end. Where it says sponsor on the bottom, those are not lit, else everything else on the board except for where it says Holy Family would be a backlit display. So it's one giant TV. Tonight, staff is recommending a motion to adopt the resolution amending the conditional use permit for Holy Family Catholic High School at 8101 Cochia Lane. And I will stand for any questions.
All right, very good. Thank you, Travis. These are 4 options for us on the, okay, very good.
Correct, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Question for you. Did I read it correctly that says this scoreboard will not be lit past 10 p.m. in the evening, ever?
I wouldn't, Mayor, Council, if it is within 50 feet of a residential property, it wouldn't be lit
Okay,
after 10 p.m. High school football games sometimes will go after 10 o'clock. So we did take a look at what other communities did with different signs, and that was one of the things that we looked at, is that proximity. And it's also one of the reasons we made sure to go in and take a look at how can we mitigate nuisances going forward and make sure that that relationship with the school still continues.
So do they intend to have this lit at any other time other than during games?
Mayor, one condition, I do apologize, forgot to put this into the notes. One of the conditions is it's not intended to be used as an advertisement. It's intended to be used in conjunction with events on the athletic field. So football games, track and field, commencement, what have you for school events. But it wouldn't be something that would be on Saturday afternoon in the summer when nothing's going on, advertising for any type of business or things like that.
Okay, very good. Council, other questions, comments?
You have in there that no sound. I'm assuming that's referring to more like PA sound, and that because obviously a scoreboard has a buzzer, right? So, but that's pretty short and quick.
For this,
Yeah.
it would be no sound. It's only the natural sound of the electricity going through the board. I'm not,
There's no buzzer that like because usually those are built into the.
my understanding it's not there, but I would defer to Brian with the
Okay.
Holy Family to answer that question.
Brian, hi, welcome. Come on up to the podium and let us talk to you here a little bit. Please state your name and occupation, address.
Brian Aubrey, I'm a Victoria resident, facilities director over at Holy Family. So this whole project is kind of my baby. The sound, currently right now, the sound is coming from the scoreboard. With the new sound system we're putting in, sure we could figure out a way to get that off the scoreboard. I wasn't sure about sound, but all the other sound is coming through our PA system. But yes, most scoreboards have it when the timer comes down, but we can try to figure out a way to do something different if that's what is needed.
Okay. I guess I don't have a concern with that. I know it's part of the,
Yeah.
part of how you.
I
play the
kind of
game,
just
so-
assumed it was but I wanted to clarify that since.
I think the sound that you were referring to is like music
Right,
and
yeah.
stuff like that.
That's what I was kind of.
So, and all that is directed towards the field and the new bleachers. And then we also, one of the things to do, not related to this, but sound, is we also, to help with residents, so when the kids are training and stuff, we're putting lower speakers down at field level, so the upper speakers aren't blasting out into the community as much.
Yeah.
So,
Nice touch. Good. Okay, other questions, comments? Got Brian?
Just curious,
Councilmember Gunderson, please.
why not face have the light facing into the school versus coming out into the, it's not a, I'm
thought
for
about
it.
there's some utility lines, I think water is out there. And one of our concerns was having a big wall right for the residents, looking out on from their development as they come out, and then there's this big wall. We wouldn't be putting a sign or anything on there to decorate it, it's just a big solid wall. So we thought having it lower on the other end, away from it, would be less intrusive.
And
Yeah, go please.
adding on to the mayor's concern about time, can we put a caveat that in the rare exception or rare occasions that a game gets postponed, I've been a part of a game that's been postponed to midnight almost. So is there something we can do so that all of a sudden they're not getting hit with complaints at 10, they're supposed to be down at 10 o'clock? If there's something that,
Councilmember, that is something we can definitely put in. I would like to point out that if it's beyond, or if it's outside of 50 feet from residential property, that 10 o'clock doesn't apply.
And this all is,
so this is all outside, that wouldn't apply. Because you've got it listed from probably between 10 and 6 a.m. within 50 feet of residential property. Okay, I mean,
I think the closest was right.
we don't need that then?
yeah.
Mayor member, thank you. Mayor members of the council, I believe that staff had reported that the closest residential property was 900 feet. So we can certainly make that amendment, not a problem, but
People to understand that sometimes in the rare occasion, the game's gotta go long. And people are gonna call, cause they're gonna see, well, it's supposed to only be lit 10 to 6 and not read 50 feet within the sign, so. Wanna make sure we're covered so that we're just not getting unnecessary calls.
Well, Councilmember Gunderson, it almost, if reading this literally, operations prohibited from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. If within 50 feet of residential property, correct? So is this not a moot point? This is 900 feet from residential property, so.
Within my experience, people only read what they want to read, and they'll call anyway. So making it later, making it later, it would probably just benefit us to just cover that and say, yeah, this is the way, because I can tell you 95% of those games are going to end on time and be done. But it's that 5% that's going to give everybody here working and taking those calls a headache.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, there's going to be times where you're going to go into overtime and the score is going to be.
I want to make sure that staff's not taking unnecessary headaches and we're covered so that that doesn't become a pain point in the future. Because I can tell you that people will stop reading at 6 a.m. and because they saw what they wanted to see and then they
Right. I mean, I think, I present a probably larger concern is what mechanisms can we get in place so that somebody gets a phone call that says, hey, the scoreboard didn't get turned off and the thing is blaring at midnight because somebody forgot to turn the scoreboard off, somebody forgot to turn the lights off. That does happen. We've had our lights in our own ball field on till all hours of the morning. So just, I think we're all so particularly sensitive to this because there's other issues that are going on with people's external lighting and neighbors are having a little bit of a difficulty with that. And we just don't want to put you in that position. So, I think it's pretty clear that you need a scoreboard. I personally will say that it's much more attractive to have that sign closer to the gymnasium wall and you're looking at just a blank screen rather than having it closer to Cochia and looking at unsightly infrastructure on the backside of it. And then, you can't really get the sort of, let's be honest, that where it's curved at the top is an advertisement for Holy Family, even though it's turned off, which is fine. I mean, I think that this high school is a gem in our community. We're lucky to have it.
Thank you.
So that notwithstanding, that operation prohibited between 10 a.m. and 6 a.m., if within 50 feet of the residential property feels moot to me. So do we need that, I guess?
fine with it. I just want to make sure it was raised. The point's been
Okay.
raised that football games don't always end right at 10
Right.
o'clock, right? So it's just, soccer games typically aren't going that late or starting earlier, so.
Very good. All right, can we see our options again for our motions? Other questions, comments, final? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt the resolution amending the conditional use permit for Holy Family Catholic High School at 8101 Cochia Lane.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Can I ask a question first?
Yes,
So
please.
you read number one, right? Do we need any, because the sound that we just talked about, right? Like, I think, at least, some of us, I think, are in agreement. Do we want to make sure that, like, we are saying we don't care if the sound, right? The buzzer comes from the scoreboard, because that's what a scoreboard is meant to do, right? Like,
Motion to adopt the resolution with changes to allow for sound.
buzzer.
We can
Game-
massage this, right?
Game-related noises, game-related, integral
We're okay,
game-related.
we're okay if the thing buzzes,
Okay.
as long as it's relevant to the game.
Well, so, Mayor, I don't
Okay,
wanna
yes,
step on-
thank you.
I don't want to step on.
Dig me out of
I don't want
this
to step on staff's toes here, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just looking at the resolution, which of course contains the list of new conditions, added conditions to the existing CUP. And as I read it, I mean, two comments. One, with respect to the sound issue, as I read it, there is a condition that says the billboard will not emit sound. So, I mean, I think as is proposed, the sign, whatever the right word is for it, can't emit sound. But based on the conditions, and then just, and I'll stop talking. I note that several of the conditions shall be placed in such a way that it doesn't create a nuisance and related things impact property values. You could just change that language to say shall be placed and operated in such a way to not be considered a nuisance, to give the city a little bit more flexibility in the future about operations. It sounds to me like council's okay with the idea that a game might go into overtime and end at 11, that's okay, but if the game's going to end at 4 a.m, that's probably not okay, and this would give you the flexibility to sort of set those rules if you had to down the road.
All right, I'm seeing staff nodding their heads, understanding Council, Mr. Vosa's.
So I will withdraw the first motion and make the new motion to adopt with changes, the resolution amending the conditional use permit for Holy Family Catholic High School at 8101 Cochia Lane. Does that give us enough leeway to make those changes as necessary?
Yep, I mean, I think, assuming, I see nodding heads over there, I think, it sounds like adding a couple words to the resolution, so that works fine.
All right, very good. We have a motion.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Roberts had the second,
Correct.
and all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to our next item, which is to consider a approval of the final plat for Hunters Brook Creekside Fourth Edition. Presenting that this evening is our city planner, Brian McCann. Mr. McCann, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Yes, tonight we have a final plat proposal for the final edition of the Hunters Brook Creekside development. As you're aware of the platting process done in 3 phases, we are at the final plat where the review of the finer details of a development with the finalization of development agreement, which will come to you at one of your future meetings here for this phase, and other sorts of final approvals. So a little backstory on the Hunters Brook Creekside reviews. The sketch plat was initially reviewed for the Hunters Brook development in 2020 with a revised preliminary plat that came in October of 2023 with the final plat review for the first edition. The second and third editions were approved earlier this year as well. So existing conditions of the site, it is a vacant wooded parcel with a portion of the West Chaska Creek running through the southern border of the parcel. If you've been out to that area lately, then you will know that grading and tree clearing are currently ongoing on the property, which was part of a grading agreement that was approved by the city council back in April, I believe. The fourth edition final plat, as I mentioned, is for 3 lots on a single private drive. It's zoned PUD with the Hunters Brook Creekside PUD with underlying R1 single-family zoning. The total site is about 10.6 acres with only 2.81 net acres being disturbed. As you know, the land use guidance for this area calls for a density between 2.25 to 6 units per acre. With those 3 lots on the disturbed 2.81 acres, the density comes out to be just over 1 unit per acre. That goes into our comprehensive plan amendment that was reviewed and approved by the city council last month. The fourth edition density, my apologies, is actually 1.06, not 0.76. The Conservation Residential District Comp Plan Amendment that was approved last month does allow densities between 1/2 acre and 2.25 units per acre, provided that environmental preservation components are included with the plan. So in this instance, they are showing tree preservation efforts, and it is within the Shoreland Overlay District. Just a current status update on where that amendment is at. Adjacent jurisdictions have been notified. We haven't received any responses back yet. They have 60 days to do so. But after those 60 days, we can submit the amendment to the Metropolitan Council for review and approval.
Where are we in that timeline?
Yeah, so I believe,
45?
yeah, 30 about, yeah. And then after that, after those 60 days, regardless of if we've received responses or not, we can submit the amendment. And then their administrative review is another 15 days. So all in all, we're looking at another 45 days in total for this.
Okay.
And the final plat approval for this evening is contingent on that comp plan being approved by the Met Council. So our Shoreland Overlay District does have an impervious surface maximum of 25%, as well as a development open space minimum of 50%, and a lot width minimum of 75 feet was a recent ordinance that you all reviewed as well.
Regarding park dedication for this addition, this is part of the Hunters Brook area, as I mentioned earlier, which does have park and trails included. The developer was required to provide the remaining land with cash in lieu. So as part of this addition, the final 3 lots will require that parkland dedication fee requirement. Regarding utilities and access, this parcel is served from Rolling Hills Parkway just to the east to extend to the site through that private drive. And then the stormwater management is subject to the CCWMO rules with review by the city engineer, and they're currently in the process with the watershed on that effort. Here's a list of conditions that was required with the preliminary plat approval back in October of last year. They've either satisfied or are in the process of completing all of the necessary requirements for preliminary plat. And then here I have staff proposed conditions for approval, most of them being our standard boilerplate conditions for final plat, but number 1 there does include the approval of the comprehensive plan amendment as a condition of approval. So with that, I have some sample motions for you on this for the request this evening. The first one being to approve, the second to deny, and then the third to table, which is not recommended because the 60 days for this application does expire prior to the next council meeting. With that, staff can stand for questions, and the applicant is in the audience tonight.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. McCann. Council, questions, comments on this item? This is not a new item. We've seen it before, more than once. All right, very good. Seeing no questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt the resolution approving the final plat for Hunters Brook Creekside Fourth Edition.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda, item 6.3, consider a variance for 7321 Tamarack Trail. Mr. McCann, the floor is yours. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, tonight we have a variance proposal to our impervious surface maximum for 7321 Tamarack Trail. The property is just north of County Road 13 and is also adjacent to Tamarack Lake and a portion of the Arboretum. The property is zoned PUD with R1 underlying, and it is part of the Overlook at Tamarack Lake subdivision, which was approved in 2004. The applicant applied for permits back in March and was notified of the 25% impervious maximum. All of this, I would like to mention, also occurred prior to the recent variance with a similar request that you all saw back in April. They did apply for the variance on May 2nd, the variance that you saw on May 13th. The applicant was told that the variance is the suggested path for remediation, but not recommended by staff based on the feedback from the city council at the meeting on May 13th. Other properties in the neighborhood did receive pool approvals prior to that definition change in 2020 that we've talked about in the past. So you can see 2 properties along the same row of houses as the subject property that received pools prior to that definition change in 2020. Looking at the specifics of their proposal, they do have some tree removal. They're proposing about 29% of tree removal, which comes out to only 36 inches removed for the entire property. Their replacement obligation does mean that they have to put in 11 inches of replacement trees. They're showing on their plan to provide 5 replacement trees for those 11 inches. For the variance and shoreland requirements, as I mentioned, they're proposing to exceed the 25% impervious allowance. Looking at our shoreland requirements, it does not meet a bluff definition, so they're exempt from the bluff setback standards. And then the property is currently at 25.82%. That was done with a porch addition that you can see in the back. It was permitted at the time. And then after the pool, they are proposing a 39.09% impervious for the property. The DNR did review this request. As I mentioned, part of the applicant's request also includes that definition for the impervious surface change for consideration. As you mentioned at the meeting on May 13th, there were concerns with this being a uniqueness criteria since the unique characteristics should be about the property. The DNR has reviewed the request and provided the following comments: that stormwater over 25% is captured and treated with plans from a licensed engineer, which the applicant has completed and provided as part of their application, and that they also incorporate native plantings for their tree replacement obligations, which are currently in process with the applicant and his design team. This was reviewed by Kara Garin, the city engineer. She mentioned that type B soil is indicated on the plans, and type B soil has not been seen yet in the city of Victoria. Now, what that means for the applicant is that if it is type D soil, which is usually seen in Victoria, they will have to change their infiltration basins to filtration basins, which would just be an increased cost for the applicant. The applicant was informed of this and is aware of that coming into the meeting this evening. So variances have to be reviewed for 3 standards, 3 practical difficulties. The first one being, is the request reasonable? The applicant has provided a reasoning that a residential pool is a reasonable request for residential property. The second being, are the hardships unique and not created by the landowner? The applicant has provided 2 criteria for this. The first being that the lot dimensions do not provide sufficient area for our current standards for a newly developed lake lot. So our current standards for a lot adjacent to a lake would require 20,000 square feet and a lot width of 125 feet. Now, this development was approved 20 years ago, and the standards were different back then, so they met the standards at that time, but they don't meet our current shoreland lot standards today. And then that impervious surface definition change after 2020, and as I mentioned, the council feedback received on the May 13th meeting regarding that criteria. And then, will the request alter the essential character of the neighborhood? As I mentioned, there are 2 other pools in the neighborhood, which will not create an alteration to the neighborhood's character. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at their meeting on June 18th, which was properly noticed and held. Staff did not receive any comments. No members of the public attended to comment on the request, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the request with a 6-0 vote. A lot of the discussion at Planning Commission revolved around the idea of a net impervious. So when someone is accommodating that additional stormwater and making up for that percentage, it becomes net impervious instead of a flat impervious rate like we have. So some other communities in the area have that in their shoreland ordinances, such as Minnetonka and Edina. So Planning Commission recommended that staff look into that as part of a future shoreland ordinance change. With that, I have some sample motions for you this evening. The first being to approve the resolution based on Planning Commission's recommendation, the second to deny the variance, and the third to table the variance, which is not recommended because their 60 days expires on July 1st. With that, staff can stand for questions, and the applicant is in the audience.
Very good, thank you. Can you flip back one? So I'm understanding that engineering has figured out a way to turn this into a net impervious rather than an over impervious. Did I understand that correctly as I'm reading through the materials for this evening?
Correct, yes. The DNR required that they capture that additional stormwater and treat it to essentially get them below 25% so that they're not creating any additional runoff. That net impervious concept that we talked about, that would essentially make this have to not go through a variance because that net impervious would put them at 25% or less.
Okay, understood. Okay, very good.
This, sorry,
Councilmember Gunderson, please.
net impervious on this homeowner, on this applicant, the net impervious is being reached through by them paying for that, right?
Correct.
Or if it's approved, they're paying for the net impervious. So if we go, my question is later on down the road when we get other requests, because we will every time we do something new, we get more requests, right? How do we make sure if we go to a policy or to write in the policy that it's to the applicant's, it's the applicant's responsibility to get to net, that there's not any liability on the city to get to net for impervious, you know what I'm saying? We're not the ones responsible to try to get a development or somebody else to net impervious.
Correct, yeah, and all of that would be evaluated as part of the building permit with the pool. It would be a requirement of their approval to get to that net impervious, and then it would be up to the applicant in this instance or any other future applicant to maintain that engineering system so that they're always under that 25%.
And is there a point at which the DNR says you have too many engineered, or is that for net impervious? Have they said anything along those lines?
Not that I'm aware of. We haven't approached the DNR about this yet. We just know the concept exists. We haven't explored it further yet.
But to be clear, we have an ordinance. It specifies what conditions need to take place. The square footage of the improvements and the prospective pool need to be below the number. That's our ordinance. That's where we stand. We either bright line it or we don't. The concept of infiltration baskets and things like that, this is a DNR specification that they require in order for them to say, we approve of the stormwater capture so that that's not making its way into the lake, tributaries, et cetera. So I want us to maintain the focus that we're not sitting here trying to dictate what our future potential policy should be, but that's not the subject of what's before us. But the questions do become relevant as to whether, where we want to consider yes or no on this.
Right. Questions, comments? I mean, my concern with this is always, we do have an impervious surface for a reason. It does protect our our water, our tributaries, our lakes. If we can engineer this in such a way that we come out equal on the deal, I'm okay with this.
Do we have information on, we probably had conversations on the planning commission about the change, and I don't remember them off the top of my head. But what were the reasons for this area to be changed from pools being approved to now? Was it the DNR that sparked this change?
Mayor and council members, I would assume so. Without being here in 2020 when that ordinance change occurred, I can't be sure, but I would guess that the change to include a pool surface area and impervious came from the DNR, not from the city.
So we didn't change this, if we just leave the DNR out of it, would our policy still be would our policy likely still be that we would have approved a pool here? But now we're just trying to play by DNR rules in a shoreland overlay district?
I guess that's a difficult question because regardless, we have to evaluate it based on our current standards, and our current standard says 25% with pool surface area.
Understood.
Right. I mean, there's a line of demarcation. There is no grandfathering of properties that are in the shoreline.
I'm just trying to, you look at two house away on each side as a pool, right? You got every other house basically now, if this were built, has a pool. And that basically becomes the nature of the neighborhood. Now that once you have two, now you've got a neighborhood with multiple pools.
True, but one needs to consider the fact that the impervious surface change was made to take into consideration these groundwater runoff and potential pollution into the areas that we're trying to maintain, because obviously we're not in the business of making ordinances just because we have nothing to do. We're making the ordinances so that we're trying to preserve
Yeah.
preserve and protect.
Right, and this comes under, in my mind, when we know better, we do better.
Right,
And so
Agreed.
we've implemented this new ordinance that says, we understand that you add a pool and it creates runoff. This applicant has given us some engineering that doesn't add to that problem. So, so I'm saying, I'm okay with that, but I'm with you. We made this change, you can't sort of grandfather everybody in, because now we know. Now we do better.
Right, and, but what I'm saying is now we approved this with net impervious, or allowing them to engineer it this way, we're gonna have other requests. Where it's just the nature of these requests. We
Is
go
the-
down the hill, we get hit with them all the time.
Well, and I guess like to that point, right? Like, is this something that like it would be easy to hit, to get to net for other applicants, or is this like a unique situation, right? Like they're able to do something, probably spend more money, right, to get to there. So is it mostly just, if other people came to us, it would just be how much are they willing to spend to do it for the most part, and you can get there, or?
Mayor and council member, yes, essentially, if a similar request were to come forward with a variance, the DNR would say the same exact thing, that needs to be engineered appropriately, and that comes with additional cost and design on the applicant's part.
I mean, I'm, on the face, I'm not in love with the idea of trying to go and come up with a concept of engineered, because we may get 15 different solutions that says this is engineered, and the reality of what we're trying to do is try to preserve and protect from runoff that has been shown there's a damaging effect. That's why the ordinance was put there in the first place. It wasn't, again, not because staff didn't have anything to do that day. So I do have another question that perhaps we can answer, is that we'll now need fencing around this pool pursuant to our pool regulations. And then we have a drainage and utility easement that's running across the corner of the property. What are we gonna do to keep the fence out of there? Because what I don't see is a way for the fencing to just stay roughly a ring around the pool. We have had issues with other residents in the city wanting to put fencing in drainage and utility easements, and we've held the position that that's not an acceptable use of drainage and utility easements. So are we able to ensure that we're now not creating another situation with potentially approving this request that will now be putting fencing and drainage and utility easements? Or is, if we go forward, the thought of not having fencing come into the easement?
Yes, Mayor and council members, to that point, I don't believe a fence exists on the property currently. No, the applicant is shaking his head no. But they are showing it with their plans. Now, part of that does include encroaching into the drainage and utility easement. That corner that we're talking about is shown with the blue line here. It cuts through a significant portion of their backyard. There is not any city infrastructure in this easement. It is for drainage purposes for the development. So a fence could be allowed to go in there with staff review and approval. And I conferred with the city engineer back when this application first came through, and I don't believe she had any concerns about a fence within this easement.
Okay, thank you.
All right, council, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt the resolution approving a variance to maximum impervious surface for 7321 Tamarack Trail. Now, again, do we need to put in the net impervious in that? Or is that all in the,
No, that's a condition.
that's in the condition? That's all right, I don't have to.
Mayor and council, I defer to Brian.
Yes, Mayor and council members, it is in the resolution. Now regarding that net impervious that we talked about this evening, If that's something that we would like to implement in our shoreline ordinance in the future so that an applicant in the future does not have to come back for a variance, that's something we can absolutely explore separately from this.
Okay,
So we got the motion.
we got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to oppose because I'm not confident that we have enough in this variance to ensure that we're going to get this impervious surface, the engineering work done. So if we can have that as a condition that the systems will be installed and the installation of those systems is required for this variance, I think that to me seems like the appropriate way to go about.
Mr. McCann, you can put some appropriate conditions on that we go back and make sure that those engineering,
Yes, absolutely. Councilmember Gunderson, do you want to amend your motion then?
Yeah, you want to kick it back to me?
yeah. Councilmember Gunderson, please.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution pending
Engineering criteria?
engineering criteria to reach net, what was it called? Net impervious, adopt the resolution pending net impervious, the variance to a maximum impervious surface for 7321 Tamarack Trail. Did that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, do we feel comfortable that that covers the installation of the needed infiltration systems to bring that impervious?
I would, yeah, I'd take the staff report and I would take the resident and applicant at their face value that they're gonna do it. I mean, I don't think an individual is gonna lie to us. I think others will, but I don't think an individual will. This particular applicant, I can't take a resident doing that. There's others that have, and I think that's a separate issue that we've dealt with some of the things that we get with larger developments. But with this one, I don't have a problem with
Right.
taking on face value.
Okay, but we've got that in our motion now. You know how to take care of that, Mr. McCann, very good. We have a motion, Councilmember Roberts seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, just,
Please,
I don't
Mr.
think,
Voss.
I don't think we need to complicate it any further. I mean, a motion was made, it passed 4-1, and then a motion was made and it passed 5-0. I just want to be clear, I think everyone intends that the second motion replace the first, and
Yes,
technically under Roberts, we might have taken a motion to reconsider the prior vote, but I think we all understand that's in effect what has just happened, and that's fine, so.
okay, very good. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Attorney.
This has been an exercise in parliamentary.
Right.
this evening. Oh, my goodness. All right, very good. Thank you for that, Mr. Vos. We have a unanimous motion. Councilmember
Do
Roberts, please.
we want to then, I guess, right back to what we talked about, this impervious, is that something we
Yes.
want the
Thank you.
planning commission to look at more and staff?
Yes, I think we do want to consider this idea of net impervious over hard surface
Because
or whatever.
I think we need to have I don't think one shoe is gonna fit all.
Correct.
So I think we need more information.
Okay, very good.
I agree.
Ms. Hardy, is that agreeable to you? Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Members of the council, there are no more items to come before us this evening. So let's move on to reports and emerging issues. Attorney Vos, anything from you this evening?
Mayor, council, you will surely think that I'm really, really hyper-focused on cannabis. I'm not, but it may seem that way. Yeah, the department, the agency that's been formed to deal with this now has released the model ordinance for cities to consider. And so I think you can expect staff to probably get a grinding on that suggested approach. I think cities all around the state, around the metro, are starting to dig into that now. That was released about a week ago, and I've shared it with staff, and I'm sure they would have heard about it themselves. So there'll be some activity now on direction that this city wants to take on the future of licensing of cannabis products.
Very good, thank you. Anything else?
No, thanks, Mayor.
All right, Ms. Hardy, anything from you?
Nothing from staff, Madam Mayor.
Okay, very good. And anything from the council this evening? Councilmember Gunderson, please.
It's not, it's just a more social, I don't know, observation. And reading things in my email for the city and trying to come up with a thought behind it. It frustrated me trying not to get it out, so I'm gonna get it out here. Because I think, I don't know, it's good or bad, I don't really know. But we got an email asking for action from a resident regarding an issue they're having. I'm gonna leave it broad. But really, you know, that they're having with another resident or with a neighbor. After explaining the issue they were having, they said they hadn't spoken with the other neighbor. It's kind of like asking the referee to make a game call before the game's even started. Plays to a bigger societal issue that people don't talk to people, right? We're not talking to our neighbors. We're not going to find out what the issue is. A simple conversation could end this, whatever the situation might be, right? And I'm not upset that we get emails all the time. That's what we're here for. We're here to get emails, but we're not here to play referee every time. We're not here to, just because somebody doesn't like something, that we have to get involved and intervene, or that the city has to spend staff time doing it. I'd like to see people having conversations, getting to know people, having those conversations, talking through their issues without it, you know, going right to litigation or right to, you know, I don't know, ostracization in your neighborhood, or in some instances, violence. We've seen that, right? These issues get big. So if you send us something and you want us to do something about it, don't tell me that you haven't talked to the person yet. And this is me, I'm speaking for me, but you gotta have made an attempt. If you want us to do something, make an attempt to talk. If it's something that's really bad, right? And depending on the reasonableness, but don't tell me that you haven't spoken to your neighbor or spoken to the other person, whatever the issue is. Have those hard conversations. We gotta start having those hard conversations. If you think it's a hard conversation. If you can't have the hard conversations, then what is the point in living in society, right? If we can't get those out. I sat, since we got the email, since it came through, trying to figure out how I can say this without putting somebody out. But it's a hard conversation, it's hard to talk about. I'm not here to belittle or demean or, you know, make light of any of this, but I am here to say, go have that hard conversation before we gotta do something about it. Before we spend staff time and money and all that stuff to come up with an ordinance that might be just an ordinance for one specific instance. Right? Things change all the time, we gotta deal with it. And if you don't have those hard conversations, then we're just not improving everywhere. I mean, my neighbor's nice enough, my lawnmower's been dead for a week. It's been in the shop. And this rain has been killer, and I had to borrow a lawnmower so I could get that done today. Because we're in the midst of 3 children, right? Sports and piano and whatever it is. I was able to have that conversation. Hey, can I borrow your lawnmower? I have that relationship with them. And you don't have to have that type of relationship, but you've got to have some kind of ability to communicate with people. And if we can't, then, you know, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know why we do what we do in our personal life, in our professional life, all around, right? So a little more heavy than maybe we were looking for, and I just really just didn't sit with me very well, the hard conversations, and you know that it's got to be, and it's a little more public, but that's what we're here for. You know, we got elected to do this and take those emails, and that's great. But if it can be handled by a simple conversation, go do it. And then if it needs some other action, I'm happy to sit and listen and find a reasonable way forward. But that's just me, and I had to get that out because I just did not want to let it fester.
Thank you, Councilmember Gunderson.
Hey, thanks for bringing that up, Councilman. I just want to offer a little balanced perspective, I think, on that is, and that you're absolutely right. We live in a community where we should value those kind of conversations and be able to, you know, feel free to approach those. We also do need to be somewhat sensitive to the, not all of our residents will feel that way, and that there is also a chance that somebody could get violent and could have an altercation. And if that's a concern that they have, I wouldn't want people to feel that they should put themselves in a situation like that before the city council and city staff would react. So I think we need to just take a balanced perspective. I don't recall this exact language that the resident put in their email. I believe, if memory serves me correct, they asked us about, do we have an ordinance that says you shouldn't do this? And then if so, what are my opportunities to redress that? And I think that if we haven't done so already, we're in the process of moving that into staff to research that. And then we can start to go down the resolution conflict. It is a touchy subject, and I wouldn't want to have in our town somebody have a situation get escalated, and then God forbid we have a violent situation where it's like, get off my driveway or I will shoot you. That's not a conversation or a story that we'd ever want to hear. So I do understand that people would be somewhat reticent to approach certain individuals in the community. And I'll just close with that.
Very good, thank you. Anything else from council this evening? All right, seeing nothing, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.